What up, dudes? Robby here. All right, so wanted to do more like mental game type content, I suppose. One of the more popular questions that I get regarding performance pitchers, obviously, I won't speak too much of the hitting side of this category, but how to make in-game adjustments or just in-game adjustments in general. Okay, so we know, probably hear it all the time about this dynamic of the guys that are the best of the best, right? The guys that do it at the highest level, the guys you watch on TV. From a physical, gifted, kind of just talent spectrum, they're relatively similar to the guys that you'll see like in the minor leagues or guys that you see, not maybe have as good of success in the big leagues as these guys. So what makes them different is that their ability to make adjustments is second to none, right? It's literally within one pitch, these guys, the best of the best, can literally go from looking a fool, completely just checked out, zoned out, whatever, to all of a sudden next pitch they're doing something really well. So what is that? How is that? Why is that? There's not any absolutes to this. Hopefully I can speak on some things, again, from the pitching standpoint that maybe will click, and something that you can be mindful of as you approach your development stages. So first things that I will say within in-game adjustments is identify your mistakes, right? Like identify the things that you as a pitcher in this case don't do well. Okay, so I'm going to throw out like a random example, but this could literally be anything. So say one of the things that I don't do well is that, or say one of the common mistakes that I make in a game is that when I go to throw a four-seam heater, glove side, maybe ahead in the count, and I want to like let it rip a little bit, say I'm just late with my hand and I end up like short hopping the catcher and I cut the ball off. It doesn't truly spin backwards and get that ride. It kind of fades and whatever ends up in the dirt, a little scoop here, and then get your ball back, and frick, why'd I do that? Right? So that's a very common kind of mishap. And for you to identify like, okay, that happens relatively often, now we can work towards making that in-game adjustment relatively soon, or sooner than later, right? Not having an adjustment, so then every time you go glove side in that same particular situation, you go freaking in the dirt, whatever. So identify like the things that you do bad, commonly do bad. Words are fun, right? So then you can kind of work towards incorporating some protocols to then get you back, right? So for me as a pitcher, I don't like to think so much of like the mechanical process of throwing a baseball while I'm in competition. So there's two ways that I would say, you got to approach it. And again, you got to I understand the individual, identify yourself, how much you can process. Can you articulate physical movements in a game and still be okay? Who knows? For me, I'm like, okay, I know that I can't really think too much about the movements, because then I'll start like really trying to feel, and it's all freaking downhill. But what I'll do is I'll just set sights different, right? So for that same exact pitch in that example that I gave you, I'm trying to go down and away glove side, and it's ended up in the dirt. Well, maybe the next time that I do that, I'll set sights a little bit elevated and see what we get out of that, right? So I like sights because it's kind of the brain-body connection, so I don't have to think as much physical stuff, and I can just kind of allow my body to then follow those sights and do what it needs to do while keeping it extremely simplistic. Now, I've played with guys that can have like very physical type cues or self-dialogue that they tell themselves, right? So in that particular case, we all know that if you cut a fastball down, your hand's tardy and you're not in that right release slot to be, pretty efficient backspin and hit your spot. So someone could just be like, all right, well, I'm just going to get my hand out sooner, or I'm going to slow down with my lead foot. I talked about this in a bullpen video that I did during the off season, where I was like identifying this miss, and I was talking in the camera, and I was saying like, okay, well, when I amp up, or when I want to amp up, the tempo of this lead foot drastically shifts, into a different gear, whereas like my upper body is still in that same gear as it was next pitch. So then this is kind of working ahead of schedule, and then this is behind schedule, and then that's why we have that miss. So then it's on me to kind of go, okay, I know the problem. What's my in-game adjustment? What is it that I got to tell myself? What is it that I got to do to then, be in the best possible situation to then execute that pitch literally like this, right? So when we look at the guys that do it at the highest level, I think they just have such a good understanding of like what it is that goes wrong when they fail. And they can just flip a switch and be like, all right, well, I already know this because I'm pretty mindful and I'm pretty intentional with my process and pretty intentional with like, my self-identification stuff. So like I know kind of what to do. And a lot of this stuff, man, is like, especially at a younger age, is like a trial and error, right? Like I'm almost 30 years old and still playing, and I still kind of every single day come up with like a new like aha moment for myself, right? And I've been doing this for so long. So I think the encouragement is just like identify your where you go bad, obviously is a broad statement, but that could just be done in catch play, in like when you're by yourself throwing, like there's very little things that you can start to kind of get a better understanding for how your system works, right? So again, I know that that's a very broad kind of segment there, but for in-game adjustments, we can't get into this pattern where, we're not mindful and we're not attentive to our training or our development work or our practice stuff, right? When we are throwing every single day, we can't just expect not to be intentional. And then we get out to a game and certain things happen in the game that probably happen throughout the whole week of your practice time, but we're not mindful of it. So then we're just like, oh, frick, like got to try to make this in-game adjustment on the fly when things matter, because here's the disconnect that I see. Guys aren't mindful and intentional like in practice, but they expect all of these things that happen in a game to just be there. But when in reality, like everyone that plays baseball knows that when you're in a game setting, in the game environment, no matter what we do, right? Like no matter what we do from a visualization standpoint or our breathing, like it's going to speed up, right? Like it's gonna be different from the game to the practice. So I know I talk about this a lot, but like we can't just expect, the game to be the exact same atmosphere as the practice, right? So that's why I'm so passionate about like in between the years and doing the things that essentially need to be done for you to be put into a better spot, more comfortable spot in the game. So I guess to wrap that up, make in-game adjustments, be super mindful, intentional, and diligent with how you approach your practice work. Get a better understanding for yourself, identify your misses, identify, when and where you go bad and why you go bad, and then incorporate some trial and error periods of certain protocols that you can put into place. Can you think about something physical and still be okay, right? Or do you need to be more into your breath? Do you need to be less into here? Do you need to be more into like, competitive, hoorah? Like, that's going to change per individual, and that's the beauty of it. And the thing that you can control is making sure that you understand you, right? So in-game adjustments, the best of the best. Have a way to do it. Find a way. All right. Rake Baseball Company is the shirt, because I know a bunch of people are going to ask. I know I look jacked in it. You're welcome. That's a joke. I'm not arrogant. Maybe I am. I don't know. Discount code Robby. Love you guys. God bless.